All right, Throne of Liberty by Force Gaming. Let's take a look. Let's see how this game is shaping up. It's released in Korea now, I believe. I don't know when it's expected to release in the States, but
Earlier this month, we saw the official Korean release of Throne and Liberty. Now, I've been keeping a close eye on this, as this is, I think, one of the few good-looking MMOs planned
I
to launch
agree.
globally in 2024.
Looks so
Naturally,
good.
now that the game is live and playable in Korea, I wanted to know what people thought. While we do expect there to be some difference between the Korean and global versions, fact is much
Looks
of the
so
core
good,
game
man.
will almost certainly stay the same. So with that said, how is it? Like, what do people think about Throne and Liberty now that they've played it? Well, for
Yeah.
starters, good news is that it looks like the game itself is actually quite good. After implementing changes
good to
based
hear.
on beta feedback, most of the major gameplay and systems complaints have been addressed, to the point where people seem to really enjoy playing Throne and Liberty. Pretty much all of the reviews that I have
Ooh, look at these big fights. Is this PvP? Whatever it is, I want to be part of it. Maybe if it's PvP, maybe not right away. Look, I think this is PvP as well.
on beta feedback, most of the major gameplay and systems complaints have been addressed, to the point where people seem to really enjoy playing Throne
Maybe
and
not.
Liberty. Pretty much all of the reviews that I have watched
good.
and read have been mostly positive about the game, with a few noteworthy exceptions and
Oh, these bosses, bro. These bosses? Take a look at that boss, bro. See, that's the kind of bosses that I really like.
have watched and read have been mostly positive
Look at
about
that,
the game,
man.
with a few noteworthy exceptions and complaints about some specific elements, which we will of course cover. But overall, yes, it seems like people like Throne and Liberty. Now, one of the major things is the combat. The once static, heavily rooted combat system that had little to no movement did get a total overhaul. It now looks to be much more in line with other modern day tab target MMOs, allowing for the use of basic attacks and many skills while on the move, having some built-in movement to certain skills like melee attacks that lunge you forward, for example, while also having some abilities that do root you in place, specifically for some of the more heavy hitting attacks or channeled spells.
See, that makes sense. If it's like a huge spell and you're a caster, it makes sense that you got to stand still to like really concentrate and cast the spell. But I'm glad that I don't know how the combat was before, but I'm glad they made it to where it's like tab targeting, just because I'm used to WoW, and I think that WoW has that, right? That's what WoW is. But I also enjoy ESO's combat. I don't think that's bad.
So now, instead of being forced to stand completely motionless to perform 99% of attacks and do any damage, Throne and Liberty's combat is much more balanced and along the lines of other popular tab target games, such as World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, or Star Wars The Old Republic. And to be clear, the issue was never that you had to stand still sometimes to attacks, because that's actually quite normal in tab target MMOs. No, it was the fact that you had to stand still constantly to do any damage whatsoever. If you or your target moved, no attacks happened. So combat basically devolved into these standoffs where both players would sit motionless, staring deep into each other's eyes while spamming abilities. And if you or your opponent didn't want to fight anymore, you just had to turn around and walk away. And for melee classes, that meant having to chase them until they decided to stop moving, because while they were moving, you were not doing any damage ever. So if they just kept walking away, you couldn't do anything. You would just keep chasing them until they stood still. If they didn't stand still, oh well, too bad. But
how does stuff like that get past like the playtest phase? Like, did they not like playtest the game? And was like, yeah, that's annoying as hell. Get that out of there. It's like, what? I don't understand, dude.
yes, now with these changes in place, there is much more balance to the combat. You can basic attack while running, cast many of your abilities on the move, and even gain ground with certain abilities that act as gap closers. So yeah, it is now much more like what you are probably familiar with if you have played basically any of the popular tab target MMOs over these past like 20 or so years. On top of that, though, they do have some other things like this reactive block system, where certain enemy attacks will cause a purple indicator to appear with a shrinking circle, and if you time your block input correctly, you get what's called a perfect block.
And it staggers them. It staggers them, so you could pile on some, so you can do a bunch of damage to them while they're staggered. That's cool. You don't have to know anything about MMOs to understand that. I know, and it's like, especially like, I'm relatively new to playing MMOs, so it's like, even like, like what the hell? Why? Maybe they just didn't test the PvE or PvP. I mean, like with another player that can just run away. So strange, dude.
Where certain enemy attacks will cause a purple indicator to appear with a shrinking circle, and if you time your block input correctly, you get what's called a perfect block.
Yeah, you
And they've
see
also
that?
added this action cam, which removes your cursor and causes mouse movement to swing both the character and camera in sync. This is basically added and ideal for playing with a controller, which makes a lot of sense as
Oh.
this game will be launching on consoles as well as PC. And with these changes, player feedback
Is that a death sentence? Is that a death sentence if it's releasing on consoles as well? I don't know. Final Fantasy is on consoles, or at least on PlayStation, I think, right? And I mean, it's all right. Like being able to use the controller on PC. Yeah, same here.
will be launching on consoles as well as PC. And with these changes, player feedback that I've seen has basically been overwhelmingly positive. Every single review that I've watched so far has said it feels much, much better. Now, obviously, if you prefer action combat a la what is seen in Black Desert or Terra, well, you're gonna be out of luck because that's not what this is. But if you enjoy the combat systems of World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV or ArcAge, Throne and Liberty should now be much more up your alley. That said, I have heard that things start off pretty slow for the first like 15 or 20 levels, but then pick up with time as you progress and get access to new skills. MMO-centric YouTuber Canon specifically told me that combat starts slow and feels akin to like the World of Warcraft classic warrior experience, where you're kind of auto-attacking, you get a few skills that you use on cooldown, but those cooldowns are relatively long.
That's not a bad thing, I feel like. I mean, when you're first starting out, you don't have a lot of abilities, of course, because you're a low level. So, of course, it's going to feel slow. But when you start getting abilities that are really good, when you start getting some levels, combat it feels like you're progressing. Like you're, oh shit, I just got this dope ass ability, and now like I could tell my damage is a lot better, and I'm killing things that used to take like 10 hits. I'm killing them in like 2 now. Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. So I don't think that's too big of a deal. Um, but I just hope it don't get grindy. And I wonder what the story is going to be like too. I think the slower growth helps me get a hold of synergies. And yeah, I think so too. Like I much prefer a game to like drip feed you abilities so you can really understand what all your abilities do and like get a grip on like the combat and the way things work. And then slowly, give you more and more abilities so you get an understanding of how it functions.
Pretty simplistic early on, but towards the end game, as you unlock more skills and things progress, it gets a lot more similar to something like ArcAge's combat, which he said he personally really enjoys. Yeah, in general, I've heard really positive things about the combat system, which is a big deal for me. Now, another thing to note is that Throne and Liberty is a classless MMO where your character abilities are determined by the weapons you use. So instead of picking a mage, tank, or healer, you select from 2 of the game's 7 weapons. There is the crossbow, dagger, greatsword, longbow, staff, sword and shield, and wand and tome.
So that's like in Final Fantasy with the jobs, right? But Final Fantasy 14 has like these jobs. You can freely switch between any job or class you want to play as, like whenever you want, and level up like a different job. You're like, oh, I feel like playing a caster or like a white mage or whatever today. So you can just switch to that job, and there you go. Yeah, that's not a plus for me. I like class. See, me too. I like class systems too. It kind of feels meaningless to me when you could just switch on the fly. It like takes away some aspect of the game where like, I don't know, it just feels weird to me. It feels good like picking a class and knowing that that's your class and that's your kind of groove, and it's just weird, man. I don't know.
Each of these come with their own skill tree that has active and passive abilities, and then from that you select what you want, which is very similar to how it works in like New World or Albion Online. It does seem that there is a lot of skill interaction, customization, and combo potential with you having 2 weapons equipped at a time, and as such having 2 skill trees to pull from. I was also
What? So you can have 2 weapons equipped and you can pull from both skills. Like if I have a wand or like a staff in one hand, but then I have a sword in another, like, huh? You could do that? Maybe it works like if you have a staff, all the primary you get like you're like a mage and you get all your abilities you have as a mage, right? But if you have a sword on your back, you get all the passives of like a warrior. Or maybe you get some passives of like a warrior or something like that. Oh, Mm.
Happy to hear that the game will not require constant back and forth weapon swapping. Thank goodness. Instead, it looks
Lol. He took a shot at ESO there with his current like weapon swapping back and forth. I think he's going to explain how it works here.
constant back and forth weapon swapping. Thank goodness. Instead, it looks like when you use a skill on your hotbar, it automatically swaps weapons for you. So say you're using the longbow and daggers. Maybe you open up from range, casting something like Ensnaring Arrow and Arrow Vortex. That will be using your bow. But then as the enemy gets closer to you, you may want to use your Shadow Strike for your daggers, but you won't need to manually swap to daggers. Just hitting the keybind for that ability will then swap weapons for you. This is a big relief to me, as probably one of the biggest annoyances with these dual weapon games like ESO, New World, or Guild Wars 2 is like the required constant manual swapping between weapons. That's what I dislike the most about dual weapon systems.
That's crazy how it's gonna work. You can slot any ability from any of the like classes you've leveled up. I feel like that's gonna be hard to like. I feel like that's gonna be hard to manage like in a way where one like comboing two weapon types with certain skills on your bar is just gonna like be the bet like so overpowered. I feel like it's just gonna be hard to like yeah, manage stuff like that. That is wild to me, dude. That is wild. It is gonna make for some interesting like builds though. I'm interested to see what kind of builds are gonna come out of a system like that.
Okay, so combat feels a lot better. There's more movement to it. If you like tab target games, if you like WoW, Final Fantasy XIV, if you liked ArcGauge, you'll probably like the combat system here. And while it is a weapon-based class system, I'm also happy to hear that there's no hotbar swapping required. All of that is really awesome. And that's really one of the biggest things for me. Like, the game feeling good to play is the #1 priority as to whether or not I'm going to want to play a game long term. A very close second to that in terms of importance is actually the content. Like, what things are there to do, see, and experience in the game. As for Throne of Liberty, what do they got, and is it any good? Well, it does appear like they have managed to deliver a traditional open world theme park MMO. Much of what you expect with this sort of game is going to be here, with a few noteworthy elements. The game's open world has been one of the most praised elements outside of the combat that I have seen in every review. It is
They're fighting on like a flying whale or something.
One of the most praised elements outside of the combat that I have seen in every review. It is massive, seamless, has no loading screens, instant teleportation. Even going from character creator to playing is almost instantaneous. And while you're playing the game, there are tons of players. I have seen gameplay clips that easily have 100 plus players all in a small confined area, and that gameplay looks to be running fairly smoothly. The typical assortment of MMO questing will be in this open world. You'll be asked to kill X number of enemies, gather resources, interact with objects, find NPCs, or go and fetch an item. Again, about what you expect. Also, what's pretty great here is how good it looks. Just fantastic. The visuals of this game are really, really good. What has impressed me the most from everything I've seen has been the render distance. I mean, you can see things from miles away, and for me, that creates a really immersive experience. It really feels like you are in this world when you can see clearly so far, and even more so when there's tons of players running around as well. And the game's traversal system really rewards
That's cool, dude. You can shapeshift into different animals to like get to places faster.
When there's tons of players running around as well. And the game's traversal system really rewards exploration with the ability to glide. You've got a grapple hook and mantling. So cool. There's a lot of freedom of moving around and exploring.
Now these little pets and little mounts, is this where the pay to win comes in? All right. In order to, you know, to have the convenience of getting to places faster with a mount, you have to pay for a subscription. You have to pay for it. Did you check out the store? You might want to check out the store.
The environment. Now, what sort of activities besides those basic quests that I announced? Well, you've got open world events. Every single zone has these hourly public events that take place where you'll have to complete some task for a reward.
I love public events.
Collecting wolf tails or killing goblins or whatever. Sometimes these will be PvP flagged as well, so you'll have to fight off other players while attempting to complete your task. Killing players will even cause them to drop items if that quest has you farming for items. And leveling looks to involve
it looks so pretty, man. Look at this game, dude.
Mainly focusing on the main story quest as it rewards the most experience, but then also in between doing the main story, weaving in some of these world events, exploration quest.
The world events look cool. The bosses for the world events look badass. I'm liking it.
In between doing the main story, weaving in some of these world events, exploration quest to bump up your level during any main story quest bottlenecks. There's a few variety of dungeons in the game. There are open world non-instance dungeons, one of the things that I am most excited for. These are big sprawling areas that have tons of normal and elite enemy packs as well as bosses, but they're fully open, so players can come and go as they please. There's no instancing
No
here.
way.
And another interesting twist to this is that during the daytime, they will be fully PvE, but during nighttime, which lasts for about half an hour, it's like a 2-hour and then half an hour rotation from day to night. During those nighttime hours, the dungeons are then open PvP.
What? That is wild. That's super unique, though. That's pretty cool. You know, it sounds good on paper, but once in practice, you know, I don't know. When the sun sets, Cody would be out of there in a flash. You better believe it, dude. I'm not good at PvP, I'll tell you.
Really, really cool twist to that to make it, I guess, just more engaging and add some variety there. There's also regular instance dungeons, 9 of these in the game. These are for groups of 6 players. It's your typical setup. Form your group of people, move into the dungeon, clear through groups of ads, and then take on a boss at the end. And then there's also the solo content through Taydel's Tower. This is
See, I hope like the non-instance dungeons are marked on the map. I'm sure they will be, but if they're just like some old ruins and you like stumble it into thinking it's just like, you know, standard open world enemies in there, but it turns out there's like you're stepping into like a level 500 dungeon.
There's a solo like boss tower climb as you move through.
Wait, what is this?
Dungeon, clear through groups of ads, and then take on a boss at the end. And then there's also the solo content through Taydel's Tower. This is a solo like boss tower climb as you move through these floors from one to the next, fighting increasingly more challenging bosses. Speaking of
solo, so it's like Maelstrom from ESO. And is Torghast like that? What's the name of the one in WoW? I like the idea of solo boss challenge. Me too. Yeah, I love the It like really tests your what a damage checker kind of. Oh, see how far I can get now. I got this new piece of gear. I've leveled up some skills for this weapon. Let's get in these solo dungeons and give them a try. See if I can get further this time than I did last time.
bosses, there are world bosses. It appears like they've got around 15 field bosses in the game, all located through various spots in the open world. These open world boss battles will be quite difficult and scaled up to the number of players, potentially again over 100. And all around across the board, it looks like boss fights do have some interesting mechanics from what we've seen. Things like, you know, don't stand in the fire, crowd control ads, or they kill the group, pull bombs away from other players, stacking on top of each other to prevent damage or heal, line of sight mechanics. You know, if you've played MMOs before, you have a rough idea of what to expect from these boss fights, but I have heard there's some interesting boss fights with interesting mechanical variety. And then there is the open world PvP. PvP will be a big part of this game, but it is also up to your discretion whether or not you engage it.
How big of a part is this going to be? How big of a part is PvP going to have? You have to join PvP servers, or what you got to do? Probably have to flag for it. Yeah, that's how New World worked, wasn't it? To flag for
a big part of this game, but it is also up to your discretion whether or not you engage it. Any of the game's PvP will be clearly marked. There are timers that tell you when PvP events in the open world are going to be taking place. Like there will be certain zones that will fluctuate from being PvP flagged and then solely PvE. There's also those open world events which will sometimes be PvP flagged, but again, you will know, you can tell ahead of time exactly when this is going to happen. So if you want to avoid the PvP, you can, but if you enjoy PvP, there will be a lot of it on offer. And then also, it's worth mentioning, from everything we've seen, there is a really big focus on guild play in this game. It is required for much of the higher tier content.
We gonna make a guild? I don't have enough people to make a guild, but
in PvE and PvP. There's a guild ranking system with guild quest and contributions that level up your guild. This will do things like unlock new rewards, access to new skills, and open up new content. You've got a guild hall that will have vendors in it, as well as, of course, your other guild members running around.
So I don't know what I feel about from what he's saying. This is gonna be like super focused on like working with other people, which on one hand, it's like, of course, you want to like push like player interactivity and like, you know, pushing players to join guilds and do things like that because this is an MMO. You're supposed to interact with other people. But then again, it's like there's so many solo players. They just want to play the game by themselves. So I don't know how I feel about locking a lot of like bigger content behind like guilds and stuff and needing to be in a guild in order to do things, you know.
And the guild hall also has a portal to guild
Okay.
raids, which are essentially instanced versions of those open world boss fights.
Whoa, that's cool though. Look at these boss designs, man. Even just the drawings of them they're showing here.
Guild raids, which your other guild members running around. And the guild hall also has a portal to guild raids.
There'll be a portal inside the guild hall for guild raids. Must complete milestone. Chapter 2, Desert Shadow of the Desert. Exterminate basilisks. Man, this is cool, dude. Raid unlocked. Guild advisor only. So what you gotta level up your guild to a certain rank before these raids will unlock? Yeah, reach a guild level 15, 16, yeah.
Which are essentially instanced versions of those open world boss fights. And in terms of the basic gameplay loop of this game, well, it looks like it's going to work like this. You will be heavily incentivized to do a variety of activities. You'll focus on the main story quest because that is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of experience for leveling up. But that will be woven with doing world bosses, with doing open world PvP, with doing exploration quest and zone events. I've been told that everything is basically worth your time in the leveling up process. You won't have to choose between doing what you find most fun. Like, maybe I really like PvP, but it really slows up your leveling process. Well, apparently everything that you do, all of these various open world activities, will be rewarding towards your game progression and is worth your time to do. Speaking of progression, let's talk.
That's so cool, dude. That basically everything, because that's like the problem with some MMOs, that they don't like, hey, what if I want to do this? Well, you can do it if you want, but you don't really gain any experience doing it. So it's like it funnels players to do only certain activities, but it looks like anything you want to do in this game will have some kind of benefit towards your level or your character.
Speaking of progression, let's talk about that. Now, back during the beta, which had all of the autoplay features, which have since been removed, progression speed was a major complaint. Leveling up your character, your skills, acquiring gold and materials, everything took forever and felt overly grindy. But now, with the removal of the autoplay features, they basically retuned all of the game's progression and farming speeds. The time required to level your character and skills was drastically reduced. The amount of gold and materials acquired from all sources was increased, and to go along with that, the resources required for things like crafting and upgrading stuff has been reduced. Basically, across the board, the game was made way less grindy. Now that's...
Thank God. That's music to my ears, bro. There's nothing that turns me off of an MMO more than just it being super grindy, bro. I don't have time for it, and I don't want to do it, bro. I want to do badass stuff that makes me feel badass. If I'm out in the middle of a fucking desert killing chickens to get some kind of thing or grind for a certain like item or something like that, like I don't want to do that, bro. I don't want to do that shit, to be honest.
Said, it is still an MMO. It is still a Korean MMO, and there's absolutely a lot of grind here. This is going to be a grind-focused game, but at least now it does feel much more in line with typical MMO progression and not artificially inflated like it was during the beta when they had all those autoplay features and expected that everyone's character would be farming 24/7, either because a person was manually playing or because they turned on the autoplay features and left their game running. It is really awesome to hear that the game itself seems to be really fun to play. The gameplay has been drastically improved, and it's got a lot of interesting open world content. They really do seem to be delivering a solid open world theme park MMO. However, the bad news is that, as predicted, it is pretty much confirmed at this point that the game is very pay to win. So
no. I mean, what'd you expect, really? What'd you expect, really, Doug? How pay to win is it, though? He said very. Let's see. The nail in the coffin.
So for starters, the cash shop called Lottie's Star sells the following. You can purchase the premium currency, which is known as Lucent, and with that currency, you can do things like purchase emotes for your character or cosmetics to look pretty, or you can purchase items that remove the experience loss on death. And it turns out that if you get 20 of these deaths that have this kind of stacking debuff, you eventually get reduction to things like your movement speed, which is pretty awful. So trying to reduce this death penalty will be pretty important. But then probably the biggest, most glaring thing is the fact that the game's marketplace is essentially a real money auction house. Players who find good weapons and gear can post them on the marketplace, and then those items will be purchased by other players with Lucent, which is the premium cash shop currency. So any player can spend real money to get Lucent and then use that to purchase some of the most powerful items in the game for their character.
What's the point of making the game then? What's the point of making the gear then? What's the point, bro? If I could just spend money, what's the point of doing the raids for the gear? What's the point of doing any activities for the gear? What's the point if I could buy the gear with my money, bro? Just delete the game at this point. Just delete it. Just delete it. There's no point of even playing the game, bro. There's no point of it. Koreans, I'm disappointed with you. Koreans, I'm disappointed. I love how he mentioned this near the end of the video, because he knew if he mentioned how pay to win this was at the beginning of his video, that people would just click off the video. They'd be like, well, I'm not getting this game. Well, that's the end of it for me.
Which is about as direct pay for power as it gets. Now, with that said, you can only buy the base level versions of this gear, and will still have to enhance it through the gear's leveling system to get the most powerful version of gear in the game. And that enhancing process requires a lot of materials that can only really be gathered by actually playing. I was basically
Now, is a leveling up, like when you level your gear, is it going to be like Lost Ark, where it's basically like a chance? Like, it's not even 100%. You'll upgrade your gear.
basically told that the pay to win is pretty similar to Lost Ark, where Lucent is the premium currency that acts more like Lost Ark's gold, while Solent, which is the gold in this game, acts more like Lost Ark's silver. And it does seem like that in-game earned currency and not the premium currency will be the biggest bottleneck for player power at the moment, at least. But besides that, the fact is free-to-play players can technically farm for the premium currency by finding items that they sell in the marketplace.
Nobody's going to want to do that shit.
That other people purchase with the premium currency. So even if you don't spend real money yourself to get the game's premium currency, you'll find items, you'll sell those items that people will buy with premium currency, which then gives you that premium currency. A lot of MMOs have done this before with these sort of systems where there's a premium currency that the free-to-play players can still readily acquire by selling to the people who are doing the swiping. One of those situations, again, of exchanging time for money. That's pretty much what they're presenting here.
Yeah, but the thing is, dude, like, how rare are these items going to be able to come across? Is it like, am I just going to have to spend the whole game grinding for items to sell on the stupid-ass shop? If it isn't hard to find, I'll be a banker.
Now, I do want to add here as one final note when it comes to the monetization that, as mentioned, I watched a few different reviews, and Cannons in particular, when he was addressing the game's monetization and sort of the pay-to-win elements of it, he did note that playing in his fully free-to-play guild, where they're not doing any swiping, they're not buying items in the marketplace by spending real cash, they have still managed to be the top guild on their server. They're the top PvP guild, ranked number 1, and they have also several spin-offs of their guild that are all within the top 10, and again, they are not swiping. They are a fully free-to-play guild. So
But the problem is, dude, it makes gear have no, like, wow factor. Like, you know when you see like a certain type of gear and the only way to get that gear is to run the hardest dungeon in the game, and so when you see someone with that gear, you're like, holy shit, dude, he's like good, he's done it, dude, look at that gear he's got, holy shit. It just completely ruins that, bro. You can't show gear's like, okay, cool gear, dude. How much you pay for it? You know, it's like, yeah, exactly, yeah. And how much time are these top PvP guild putting in the game? If you don't want to spend money, how much time are you really willing? Because the normal Joe that's not a full-time streamer or does this shit like 24/7. They ain't gonna be nothing, dude. You know what they're gonna do? They're gonna get home from work. They're gonna go on the shop and throw in a Liberty. They're gonna buy that gear and call it a damn day, bro. That's what they're gonna do. Well, this is a Korean game, so it is what it is, I guess. We should all get this game and make a guild called Fuck Korea.
I guess that goes to show you, if you're looking to be competitive, at least as of now, it doesn't look like you will be required to do swiping. So I will wrap up this by saying I am super happy, and the most important thing to me when I was thinking about this game was them improving the combat, and was the content of the game interesting enough to entice me to play. It seems like that is going to be the case. It seems like combat is way better. It's definitely something that I want to jump in and get my hands on now. So much about the game looks really, really good. It's a massive shame about the monetization, but it's also not unexpected. And at this point, I'm just thinking I'll get what enjoyment I can out of it until it feels like I need to spend hundreds of dollars in order to progress. And hopefully that never happens. Hopefully just playing free to play, I can enjoy myself.
Yeah.
That's the game plan right now.
The thing is, as much as I hate pay to win shit, it's a free to play game. So I can't really, I can't really complain too much about it. Now, if I was paying money for the game and then they added all this shit in there, well, let's just say I wouldn't be buying the game. I was like, that's what it is. But it's free to play, which does lessen the blow a little bit. And it sounds like you can get like premium currency by just playing the game and getting rare materials and stuff. But at the same time, dude, it's just disappointing. Exactly. Just get the enjoyment you can out of it. I mean, you didn't pay nothing for it. So it's a win-win for you. Just don't buy the fucking premium currency and act like the shop isn't there if you want to.
We'll let you know how it pans out when the game officially launches globally. Now, as of now, that is planned for sometime in 2024. We are expecting in the first or second quarter, although no confirmation as of yet has been announced. I wouldn't also be surprised, I should mention, if we see some slight differences between the Korean and global versions. In particular, I think some changing to how the monetization may very well happen, but only slight differences. Maybe they rein in the pay to win a bit, but we'll see. We'll see. Like I said, the most important thing is the game fun to play? Does the combat feel good? And is there interesting content? It appears like the answer to all of that is yes, even with the presence of this pay to win stuff. That part of it is the most important part of it for me, that the game is fun to play, that it feels good to play, and that there's entertaining and enjoyable content. And with this open world, with all of these systems, with the PvP stuff, I'm definitely looking forward to giving it a shot. And we'll have to see how all that monetization again plays out here with the global release. But that does it for me. Generally, I am happy to hear that Throne and Liberty is actually a good game.
I'm glad they made improvements on it. Good video Force Gaming, but you kind of fucked me with that saying it's heavily pay to win at the end of the video. But what can you expect? It's a free game. It's a Korean game, so you know you gotta expect things like this to happen.